Welcome back to Beyond the Box Score. It's the show that Jacob and I get to nerd out on with X's and O's and stats. And today we have a really special guest with us. It's my favorite analyst currently on the interwebs, if you want to call it that. And it's Nate Tice from the Football 301 podcast. You can find his work at Yahoo Sports and appearances on Good Morning Football on the NFL Network. The reason, real quick, why I think Nate is the best out there is because he does the best job of making the X's and O's and film content the most digestible. To me, that's really important because it helps me learn. Before we get into it today, and Jacob, I want to toss to you in a second, I do want to bring this up because I thought it would be funny. Nate, can you read what my shirt says right now?
Oh, no. Hold on. It's really tiny. Mondays?
Mondays.
Is that Mondays in Madison?
It is
Mondays.
Mondays.
Okay.
Damn right it is. So
Oh,
Nate and I
boy.
shared this together. We both went to
I don't
Go
think I have
ahead.
many memories from Mondays.
Nobody has memories from Mondays, and I'll explain why in a moment, why that is. But Nate and I share this in common. We both went to Madison, Wisconsin.
Yes.
That's probably where the commonalities end because Nate played quarterback there, and I obviously did not do that. But
Played
funny
is a loose
story.
term.
Loose term. But funny story when it comes to Mondays, this bar. So Mondays was the bar where me and my friends frequented. It was the only bar we went to. And the best way I can describe Mondays, as the shirt says, Mondays, please binge. You can't see it on the podcast, but it says Mondays, please binge responsibly. And the best way I can describe Mondays is this: the first, the only, and most likely the last bar I'll ever go to where they poured you a drink this way. They put the glass out, they put the ice in, they filled it with alcohol, and they splashed it with Coke or they splashed it with Sprite. And so it was a bar that I frequented, that we all frequented. But the funniest story I have from Mondays, Nate, is this. My buddy Alex Wehrman, 6'4", 275, was on the crew team, or probably a little less, 250 on the crew team. Great athlete, but also a big binge drinker in college, like most of us. It was Wisconsin. So one game day, we got too drunk. He got too drunk, and he was supposed to work that night. He was a bouncer at Mondays.
Yes.
As drunk as he was, at the last minute, he said, I can't do it. Dan, you want to go try this? Here's my shirt. And so they knew me at Mondays because I was a frequent, just the bartenders, everyone knew me from being there so much, but I'm also 5'8" and 160 pounds. And I went into that bar that night like, I need a job. Can I try this? And I became that night the world's smallest bouncer. And I would say probably most likely no one has ever bounced at 5'8", 160. But I did it that night and somehow turned that into a 2-year job my last 2 years at Wisconsin when I needed money desperately. So I became the world's smallest bouncer. But I am glad to talk a little Wisconsin with you before that. But we won't get too into the team, actually, Nate, because it's not the most exciting time right now for Wisconsin football.
No, they're coming around. Defense is playing well.
They are coming around.
I'm trying to they need a quarterback, and they need to stop throwing the ball so much without a quarterback. Yeah, but no, Mondays has a special place in my heart because that was one of the few places my fake ID worked.
Yeah,
so that was so you might have been that bouncer when I was trying to get in.
It might have been me. We were not strict on that.
Yeah, I was the stiff drinks are a very real thing. I've made a lot of friends at Mondays, actually. I knew a couple of the bartenders there. So that's actually really funny to bring that up because I haven't gone to Madison in a few years, but when I do go, it's always like Wando's, because that's where my old teammates want to go and I'm just whatever, okay, State Street Brats and all that. But Mondays does have a special place in my heart. So I'm glad you're bringing it back
Always
up.
at least start your night at Mondays because you get a great drink to get it going.
Great base for
the night. Jacob, how are you doing today, my friend?
Amazing, man. Bouncer Dan is so good. Is this the first time it's come up on the podcast? First time I've heard it.
It is the first time I've mentioned it on this podcast. So
that's so
really
fun.
One of the funniest stories ever. And I worked with a guy who was on the football team. I'll end it after this. We want to talk ball, and he was 6'4", 300, and his name was Dan. So on the worksheet, I would be Little Dan and Big Dan, and I didn't love that too much, but it was well deserved.
I'll just say this: Adam Azer could never.
Yes, exactly. All right, Nate, let's get into some football talk with you. We're really excited. We know you break down the tape. And so I want to talk rookie quarterbacks to start this show. So a player that both you and I loved in watching the tape this past offseason from a talent standpoint is Drake Maye. That was a quarterback who I took some flack on my Giants podcast. Some fans were not a fan of his. They saw some of the misses in the flat, and they I don't think, could see the forest through the trees when it came to what he could develop into and what his upside was. But what have you seen so far from Drake Maye on tape?
He's still a walking, talking, explosive play. And that's why I really like him. He plays aggressive. He pushes the ball. And it was really cool in the Jags game in the London game that they fell behind. They're down 2 scores. And there he is. Like, he knows he needs 30-yard gains. He's not nickel and diming like you see a lot of young quarterbacks are really just in non-moving quarterbacks do. They're like, hey, I took the completion, can't go broke taking a profit, right? And he's launching the ball. He's giving Hunter Henry a chance down the middle, down the pipe. He's throwing the wheel route to Booty on the left side. And then, like, that's the touchdown to KJ Osborne. He could take the low route there. Nope. He knows that he can hold the safety and hit the high route. And on top of that, he's a great athlete. And that's something that got understated with him. I know why, because of how he looks, and people just can't recognize that he can be a great athlete and big with a big frame too. So there has been what's been impressive to me is that I thought he would have a few more negative plays crop up, or a few more bad decisions, I should say, because he's learning more of a true NFL offense, and Alex Van Pelt's offense is as traditional as it could be in the NFL. Not good or bad, just very traditional, very standard fare there. It was it's a BC grade in Madison, because we didn't have B minuses or C pluses.
Yep.
So it was a BC grade. But when I'm watching Maye, is that if there's an alert on a pass, he's going to try and take it. If there is the first touchdown, which was Jermichael Hasty making a nice play and making the was it Allen? God, what's his full name now? Josh Allen.
Hines.
Yeah, Josh Allen Hines. But he makes a miss in space. But I thought that was a great recognition of a blitz from Drake Maye. The simple answer would have been just to go to his traditional read to the left side of the formation. But he replaced the blitz, seeing that Hasty's cover guy was coming from the opposite side of the formation. To me, that was a pretty advanced answer. And then you see some skill set with some skills where he gets the ball on him quickly. You have to have some arm strength on those underneath routes too, because it gets the ball in their hands. So I think this is kind of what you hope for through 2 games. The O-line's rough there. Enough has been said about that, but it's not ruining them. Like North Carolina's offensive line sucked too. And so this is as positive as you could hope for 2 games. Not all perfect. There's plenty to work on, but even some mistakes, I understand why you made the mistake. He hit Andre Sisco in the chest in the end zone on one. He was trying to throw an anchor ball to Austin Hooper. And that was and again, that's kind of an advanced feel for the throw. It was a corner route that he's trying to sit him down into the little spot. Austin Hooper is just running blind on it. So again, even in negatives, there's some positives with it. People that don't like him say you're making excuses for him, like they like to say. But I think it's just been what you hope for: explosive runs, explosive passes, and better decision making than I even hope, and sack mitigation too, which is just all positive signs.
And Jacob, what do the stats say about Maye in his couple starts?
A few quick stats on Maye. So he's thrown down the field quite a bit, because the qualifier I used, the filter here, was 20 plus attempts of 10 or more air yards, and he already has hit that in 2 games. And he's top 10 in highly accurate throw rate on these throws of 10 plus air yards. This is per Fantasy Points data. And then he's 3rd overall in catchable ball rate on these throws. And so that's a huge improvement from Brissett, and just goes to show like how exciting he is in terms of his ability to push the ball down the field with anticipation. I thought he really, really improved in the second game. The first game was a little bit wild.
Yeah, it was a little.
First game.
It was the 2-minute drive going in the half against the Texans, and then the second half is like, oh, okay. You can kind of see him calm down a little bit, and then start going, oh, okay, I can try this. He had a couple sprays to Pop Douglas over the middle, but then he hits the touchdown, which is really funny because he hits the touchdown and people are criticizing his footwork on there. And it's actually ideal footwork, which confirms my thought that people don't know what they're talking about with footwork, which is why I ignored everybody for the last 9 months. And the quarterback with the worst footwork is Bo Nix. And I had to hear about, he has great footwork and still have to hear about it. So I'm glad he brought up the down the field stuff. His redshirt freshman year, like the thing about Maye, and this is all people retconning what their thoughts are. Oh, Caleb was always the number 1 guy. Maye was 1A, 1B with Caleb through most of the process until the very end. And that's not just me who had Maye really high. That is NFL scouts, GMs, talent evaluators, people in public. Dane Brugler had Drake Maye on his updated big board literally a year ago, when he updated his big board midseason. So it wasn't just like guys wanted to be cute and say like, oh, I have someone different than Caleb. Like, his redshirt freshman year is one of the most impressive seasons you'll ever watch on film. And Jacob just brought up the deep throw stuff. I think he had the highest rate of big time throws, according to PFF's numbers. And that's when you want an elite guy
with the lowest turnover rate, by the way.
With the lowest turnover rate. And as you guys have watched a lot of Daniel Jones, is you need guys to open up the top of the offense, not just launching it deep, but throwing the intermediate stuff,
Yes.
throwing the hard throws. And it's so much easier to rein a guy back in than to go, hey, Daniel, can you push the ball here? Like, can you try this throw? Like, because that's not his natural mindset. That's so much harder to coax aggression out of guys. So that was always my argument. I was like, I'd much rather have his problems, quote unquote, than the other guys that people like because they look mechanical and look very much clean on film when you watch them.
Dan has watched a lot of Giants. I would never. I also wanted to point out the scramble rate. Drake Maye is third in scramble rate so far, and I don't think people realize like how high the ceiling is for him as a rusher. His scramble rate as a collegiate prospect is like above Lamar Jackson, above Josh Allen, above Kyler Murray. There's only a few guys ahead of him, and that's what we've seen so far. I thought, like for dynasty fantasy football purposes, that before the landing spots, which we always knew Caleb was going to go to Chicago, that Drake Maye, from just purely a fantasy upside standpoint, actually had a higher ceiling than Caleb did. I thought Jayden Daniels was the only one with a higher ceiling because he has the ability to throw down the field and unlock all parts of the field with the scrambling. And it's, I mean, Josh Allen isn't a guy we ever compare anyone to, but like that's really the only thing that's close in terms of like how high the ceiling could get for fantasy.
Yes.
Yeah,
I almost didn't draft Caleb because it's like you can just get Drake Maye like 5 picks later.
I've been struggling to find a comparison for Drake because it's just, I understand why people compare him to Josh Allen, but it's just, there's something different with him. Like just, there's a little more calmness early on, but also like, he's not as big. No one's going to be as big as Josh Allen. No. And even Justin Herbert's gigantic. So like that comparison never really worked for me. And I get the play style merger of the two, maybe where he has a little bit more of computer brain than maybe Allen does, but he still has some golden retriever to him. I'm glad you brought up the rushing stuff though, because I was looking at those stats last year, and because I kept trying to emphasize that to people, it's like this dude can run, like not just like running around chaotically like Bo Nix,
right?
But more of like, no, this guy's fast, big, and he's got great vision. He can run between the tackles, and I think it was scramble wise, efficiency wise, he had the second highest first downs per scramble in all of FBS last year. I think Jayden Daniels was one, but like Drake was right behind him, and that just never got brought up. Like the narrative about Maye has still made me feel crazy. Like it really did. For a 6-month period, I felt like I was like, what am I really just like missing something here? And then I talked to everyone. I was like, no, he's great. And why are everyone acting like he can't play football? Like he shouldn't see the field for 3 years or something like that. I just didn't, it never connected with me.
Me either, Nate. And I would say Drake Maye is probably the quarterback I've watched the most tape on outside of Daniel Jones in the last 3 years, just because I was very high on him. I was hoping the Giants were going to get him. They won too many games last year, unfortunately. So they're stuck with where they're stuck. But I will say this when it comes to Drake Maye, a great point you brought up that to me was obvious when I watched him is he was billed as like the super raw prospect. And I understand it from some of the misses with the footwork, whatever you want to say. But part of being a raw prospect is not being able to understand concepts and to find solutions post snap with processing. And that was never apparent with him. It was actually the total opposite. I want to bring up a play from last week against Jacksonville, the deep shot down the left sideline. The arm talent on it is phenomenal. Right? The ability to change your trajectory, to change the pace of the ball. That's all stuff that you can see raw. But what I liked about it is the Jaguars starting a split safety look. The safety rotated to middle of the field close. He confirmed that post snap and then was so quick to get the ball out there. That to me is the stuff that really intrigues me about Drake Maye moving forward. But I want to move forward to another quarterback, Caleb Williams. And one thing that stood out to me about your evaluation of Caleb Williams, and for those who don't know and haven't seen it, Nate did evaluation articles with a ton of film cut-ups and a ton of great content within it for Yahoo Sports this past offseason. I read every one of them. Yes, we're past the draft, but I still think they're worth reading for a multitude of reasons. One more point I want to make actually on Drake Maye that I forgot. I could not understand why people taking JJ McCarthy over him in Dynasty. That never made any sense to me, and I never made that mistake. And I just want to make that clear if you can still make that trade somehow, which you probably can't. But back to Caleb. One thing that stood out to me about your Caleb article was something we agreed on, which was, and this goes for a lot of prospects. I hear this all the time. They didn't do this. They didn't do this. This is a flaw in their game. No, just because you didn't see it on tape doesn't mean you can't project it. And that was quick game with Caleb Williams. And you brought that up in your eval about how, like, look, if USC was put him in any kind of position to run quick game, he would have been the best in this class at running quick game, which is a big part of the NFL. So have you seen some of that carry over the Bears? What's been, what have you seen on tape so far from Caleb?
My last kind of high-end comparison for Caleb when I kind of finished the whole process was Drew Brees coming out of Purdue, which, I understand the creation aspect of Caleb's game, but I think his mechanics and meaning like being a quarterback and not just a guy running around and making cool trick shots has still underrated because the highlights of what his creation stuff can do. He can do all that. He can do the post snap creation and everything. That's why it's cool. But his just down to down soundness has been, I was higher on it in the process, but then now watching him in the NFL, it's been really, 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 really cool to see how much they put on him mentally. So like the quick game stuff, like you're bringing up, like, so you could see the arm talent, the accuracy, the RPMs he can put on the ball, which matters in Chicago. Like that's another thing is you have to have arm strength. That's still why I never understood Mac Jones to New England. It's like, you play in Buffalo, New England, and New York. Like, you need some arm strength here. But Caleb cuts right through the wind. Like him against Stafford a few weeks ago was really cool to watch those two kind of going at it and whipping trick shots and awesome throws. But the mental side, getting back to that, right away, week 1, week 2, they put the entire operation on him, meaning he's in charge of protections. He's in charge of play changes. He can audible plays. And that's different than killing and checking and alerting and canning, like we know, which is deciding between 2 plays. A true audible is, all right, wipe everything. I'm starting from the top and giving you a play. Like there's not anybody else knows what's going on except for me, the quarterback. And then I'm going to tell everyone. Week 2 against the Texans on the road, night game, he's doing that. And not just doing it and it kind of looks like crap. It's like, no, he's communicating. He's calm. There's the example against Carolina where he's checking into a play. Coleman Shelton, the center, goes, we got an effing fire over here. And he's like, no, I got it. And he signals routes to everybody. I don't see that from rookies ever, ever. So the mental side of him, and actually I'm going to try and talk about this on Good Morning Football, but on there, it's trying to make it digestible, even more digestible than I try to. Football 301's the pod. Now we're going down to 101, so, but I want to emphasize that I think that's just been really understated with this game is that how smart he is, how good he is at the true quarterback stuff, along with all the creation and cool stuff that we see that are highlights. So I've been so impressed with him. I'm writing about him right now. He's fantastic. Like that. In the end of the process, Maye and Caleb were 1A, 1B for me. And I just kept trying to emphasize to people, these guys are purple chips to me. There's blue chippers and then there's purple chips. And these guys are purple chips. And nothing so far with Caleb has been like where I'm like, oh, maybe I was a little, if anything, I've been more impressed, even if some of the stats haven't been there until recently. He gets it. Like he's a real guy at that position. It's a lot of fun to watch.
Do we have any stats on that, Jacob? Anything that stood out to you from Caleb these first few starts?
I'm mostly here to listen to Nate talk, to be honest. His first read target rate is really low. It's one of the lowest in the NFL. And then I think that could, be issues early on. That's risen as the year has gone on. But I also think it's part of speaks to his ability to make full field reads, which is important. His accuracy has gotten better as the years gone on. In his last game, he hardly attempted any deep throws, and I thought that was interesting. I didn't get to watch that whole game. Do you have any thoughts on that game, Nate?
Yeah, it was because they could just have their way with the Jags. So he was attacking a lot of slants, a lot of intermediate throws. Like he had a great dig to, I think it was in Dunze.
Great dig to Dunze.
Yeah, it was that
ripped out there. My God, the arm on that throw.
That's perfect, is because they can lean into empty with him because he makes quick decisions. You only want to live in empty if you have a quarterback that can do that. And you can do quick game out of it, but then it gets tight. And so the goal is to attack intermediate out of empty. That's the ideal goal of an offense. Caleb's doing it and he's ripping digs on that and tying down the underneath linebacker on it. And what wasn't too hard because the Jags linebackers weren't that great, but it was still he still did it. So again, it's just speaking to just the combination of smarts and arm talent. It's even a play he had one to Cole Kmet out of structure, ends up dumping it off, throwing over his head to Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet runs for it into the red zone. And on that play before, he changes the play completely. He's given a Beckham call, which I I was trying to reverse engineer what that meant. There's crosser on it. I was like, Beckham kicks crossers, but I was like, I don't know if Shane Waldron knows soccer like that. So I'm not going to give him too much credit. I do have some of their no huddle calls, which has been fun. And I can't wait to share those. But I just think it's just that control of the offense. Just really, how he's able to push the ball from those sets. That's been cool. The deep ball thing is, he got picked against the Jags. He's putting those a little too much touch on the deep ball. Like he's trying to float it out there.
Yep.
That comes with experience. Guys just have to learn what they can and can't get away with. So like, again, in a game like that, you're in control anyways. All right, it happens, but I think the deep ball stuff will even out as he kind of figures out what he can and can't get away with.
Unless you're Drake May and you could just layer deep.
Always watch it. Yeah. Off your back foot. Yeah.
Like he has the first 2 weeks he's played. Unbelievable to watch.
Caleb was by far the least accurate on deep balls to start the year. And because of that, on the year, he still ranks last in catchable air yards per game. I do think that's going to improve in a big way and really change the offense.
Yeah. The Texans game is definitely damaging that.
Yeah.
That game to me was, I think, the biggest learning experience for him, which I came back from the film going like, oh, you get this. Like you're like, because I'm telling you guys, like the full control of protections and being right on it is, you just don't see it. Like you really don't. Mac Jones got so much hype his rookie year. I can't believe I've knocked Mac Jones twice in one pod, but he got so much hype his rookie year for killing a play, for changing from one play to the other. And I remember someone asked me on the show and goes, is that the most impressive thing you've seen a rookie quarterback do? I go, Trevor Lawrence is doing that with Urban Meyer right now, but no one wants to make a big deal because they're not winning. But this is different than that. This is more. This is year 4 guy. There's guys getting paid $50 million a year right now, $40 million a year that have never done this. Like
Daniel
ever in their careers. Daniel Jones, Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa. Like Purdy's never done this. Like, and everyone gets hyped up. They get so hyped up how smart they are. I'm like, well, why don't the coaches give them anything? Well, yep. You got to read what the coaches give these guys, and the coaches are giving them the full control, which is, I'm telling you, it's so rare.
That is awesome insight, Nate. I want to transition it to another quarterback, Jayden Daniels. This is a weird take I'll have to start. I don't know how to explain this because I watched a lot of his LSU tape, even more than any other quarterback but Maye because of Malik Neighbors. I feel like his arm talent has somehow improved from what I saw on tape at LSU to Washington. I don't know if you've seen that. I know that's not actually possible for the most part, but somehow I've seen that. But that wasn't my only reservation when it came to Daniels. I thought you brought up some great points in your article about reservations when it came to Daniels. His sack to pressure rate, when he scrambled, how often he ran instead of throwing downfield. I feel like I've seen some of those already answered somehow at the NFL level, so I'm about to get your opinion on that. And then the last one was just a really important one, which we're not going to have the answer to for a long time, if not ever, which is, can he hold up at 185 pounds at the NFL level? And I loved how you brought up examples of how few quarterbacks there were. There were like 3 Cousin seasons, a Jeff Garcia season, and that was basically it. So it's very interesting. What have you seen from Daniel so far?
Which is weird because I kind of, and Commanders fans got mad at me for saying this, I compare him to a fast Teddy Bridgewater. And that was because I thought he was so accurate, but I didn't think he had maybe an overwhelming arm. I thought it was solid, but I think his arm is good. And maybe as far as being able to drive on throws, which I maybe kind of underrated a little bit in the process. But the weight argument, I'm never going to shy away from, because there's 2 quarterbacks that had weight concerns for me, and they're both hurt. Jayden Daniels and JJ McCarthy. So that's another notch in that data point that I'm gonna but that is why I was in that article. I'm glad you're bringing it up. Was it's like 3/4 of me just picking him apart, and then the last quarter I'm like, hey, I do like him. Like, I have him as a top 20 guy, but my argument was, if you're taking a guy top 5 or top 10, you better be right. Like the red flags better be like answerable, because he had a ton of red flags. Older prospect, only throws outside. Scrambles at the highest rate we've ever seen. He had like 100 more scrambles than the next guy in True Media's database. Those were just concerning to me, because it was more not that I don't think he could do it for a game. Can he do it for 17 games? Can he do it for 100 games? He's already out with ribs. So it's like, that's why he's going to have to change some of the style. I will say he has been really good at breaking tackles. Like there's been guys, defenders that have him dead to rights, and he's able to pull out of their grasp. And I would say that that's something I didn't give him enough credit for. I thought he would just kind of be like, someone touches him and he just flies 20 yards, which has happened. But it's also like he has been able to mitigate that stuff so much. And I agree with you that the arm has a little more juice when he's driving the ball. I think his deep balls have always been overrated. Like I could throw a slot fade to Brian Thomas Jr.
Right.
and
Or Malik
neighbors.
Neighbors.
I could do that right now, but I haven't thrown in 2 years. I could do that. That's why go balls to me. I'll never kind of rate them as high as maybe they get. Like even Maye sometimes. Why when people go, what about Maye? Maye's throwing posts, corners. Those are different than slot fades and goes, because on those, a slot fade and a go, I can just throw it to a spot. And if I'm wrong, whatever, it's incomplete. Posts and all those others, there's a little more muck. There's
Right.
a little more stuff in the middle. So it's a little different there. I know I'm splitting hairs, but there is a difference.
It's important.
It is. And yeah, I think the Daniels' control of the offense has been really cool. I know it's an air raid offense, which is technically simpler, but he's making Mike points. I've seen him change a protection, and I was like, hey, that's good. Like they're like, and coaches I talked to said he's really good in interviews and he's smart. And so there's that again, drawn to my Teddy comparisons, is that Teddy was very smart and sound and all those things. So I think some of the negatives haven't been as big as I was expecting, but there are some, he's getting away with a lot of underneath throws. He doesn't throw to the left, which I actually never really picked up in college. And then watching him in the pros, the target maps. And then I looked through True Media's data, and it was a thing. That throwing left was a thing to the outside. And it's not going to damn him or anything, but it is a thing. And smarter defenses will get on that. Watch Todd Bowles against Jalen Hurts. Every watch Todd Bowles' blitz, they always come from the right to flood him left, because Hurts can't throw running to his left. It's actually a thing. He's too stiff to throw left. So I would say there's some concerns I still have that I still want him to prove, but man, this is like, he's already hit the high end version of what I thought he could be, which is pretty cool. I want more quarterbacks. Like when people get on me about this stuff and they're always like, well, you didn't like him. It's like, no, I liked him. Top 20 grade is me liking him.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I want these guys to be good, because if there's more good quarterbacks, there's more good football. So I'm never going to like cheer against the guy, even if he was my QB3. I don't think that's a damning thing. Sorry, Commander. Any Commanders fans that listen to this, I feel like I'm coming at them, because it's just like, you guys, I know you're feeling yourself, but chill.
Yeah.
I did like him.
Marathon, not a race.
Nate's a real football guy and not a fantasy football guy when he describes the highest scramble rate of all time as a red flag. So I'm like, green flag, baby. Give me the fantasy points.
Right. I know.
I wanted to bring up that Jayden Daniels is scrambling less. After the first month of football, his scramble rate has dropped, even though he's been pressured more. Pressures lead to more scrambles. He has the highest scramble rate versus pressure of all time. During the time we have the data available. And then also he has the highest first read target rate if you remove the first month of the season. So lately he's really trusting the offense. His average time to throw is down as well. And so I do think all of that is encouraging. I feel like he's done a better job of avoiding hits. Obviously that, we just saw him get hurt doing that. But I'm curious if you guys have any thoughts on that.
He's done a much better job than the LSU. But if I think that, he couldn't do a worse job of avoiding it.
I would say the Commanders' offensive line's been one of the nice, pleasant surprises this season. The run game's really fun. Yeah, I know Bobby Johnson, right? And Giants fans love him. And then in the protection, like the pressure rates aren't as bad as I was expecting them to be, which is a credit to what they're doing on offense and how Jayden's handling it. I'll say the biggest knock is, and this is why you worry about weight as well, stop running him between the tackles, especially in the near the end zone. That's how he gets hurt, and that's a big difference between being able to get the edge as a runner and being able to run every run. Like, you're not going to run RG3 like you run Cam Newton.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to run Drake Maye like I run Jayden Daniels. Daniels is get to the edge, outrun everybody. 100%. Okay, Maye and other guys, okay, we can run a little power read or something like that, open it up a little bit. So that kind of is disappointing me. I think it was the Bucs game. Yeah. They ran it with him like 3 straight times in between tackles. It's like, you guys are getting blown out.
It's a great
Save your dude. Because
you want to run QB bash with Daniel Jones and Josh Allen, go ahead, run it. Like, God bless you. They're 250, but you shouldn't be doing that with Daniels. That's a great point. And I wonder if that's something they'll adjust to.
I have one last note on him I do think is really important is his pressure to sack rate is 19.7%, which is right in line with league average.
Which is great.
That is huge if that sticks, because that was a huge red flag coming in. He had the highest pressure to sack rate of any quarterback selected in round 1 over the past 8 years. And meanwhile, you see Spencer Rattler's rate, 29%, Caleb Williams' rate, 28%, 22% for Drake Maye. He's at 19.7%. I think that's huge.
Huge. No, it's a great point. And that's a trust to get the ball out. And really, I've been impressed with, I've dogged Cliff Kingsbury a lot over the years, and I've been most impressed with how they're able to get to so much out of tempo, out of no huddle.
Yeah.
And that's really helped out with him too, where he has confidence in that stuff. And he's like, okay, I got to get the ball out quick. Oh, it's 3rd and 10. Hey, if I check it down here, rather than try and create something, we go for it on 4th and 3. So like, again, he's the running plays are going to be exciting, but his intelligence and his decision-making has been very impressive so far.
I could literally listen to you talk quarterbacks all day. We do want to get some other concepts, but I need to hear about one more quarterback because fantasy managers were asking me to ask you about him, and it's Bo Nix. And that's the last one we'll hit on before we hit the break. So I wasn't a huge fan of Bo Nix coming in from an evaluation standpoint. I don't personally love what I've seen so far. I don't believe it's sustainable. Am I wrong?
No, not wrong. Though I think they're going to be. I do like the Broncos though. So having said, before I get into Bo Nix, the defense is a top 3 defense. And that's, I mean, we saw it last Thursday, but when they get Surtain back, this defense is legit as can be. The run game is legit, and it's a Sean Payton run game. It's going to be, I'm not saying Javonte Williams is the greatest back in the world, but he's going to get touches and it's going to be an efficient run game. Bo Nix's legs have been good, and they're using him like a little bit like Taysom Hill, which is good, but he's also throws like Taysom Hill. And Taysom Hill that doesn't make good decisions either, and doesn't have maybe the best arm juice, or tries to throw it with the best arm juice. I would say the first play of the game against the Saints is a perfect example of what Bo Nix is. I think it was a 14-yard scramble. Cool. Fantasy 1.4 points. We're good to go there. He passes up a wide open over route in a clean pocket. Wide open. And it's the first play of the game, which tells me they practiced it all week. And you're passing it up from a clean pocket. That's Bo Nix. This guy is the oldest first-round quarterback since Brandon Weeden. What is the point of you? Like, if you're supposed to be the sound, safe quarterback that then can create a little bit, but like you can't even do the game manager easy throws, that is concerning to me. And I had some Broncos fans, they're kind of accepting it though. Broncos fans kind of come at me, gonna go like, well, he's a rookie, you gotta go through it. I go, but I get that. But if your argument is that he's safe and has a high floor and he can't do that, what do you got for me? Like that, and that's why I'm still lower on him. But I do think he has some fantasy value because of the running. And I think they're going to use him more. I think they're going to use him more and more. And there's going to be opportunities there because Sean Payton could dial up a ball play. Like that, he's still Sean Payton. God, I just a meme of myself, but I think I referenced Mel Gibson in Imagination Land, the South Park episode. Say what you want about Mel Gibson, but the son of a bitch knows story structure. That's say what you want about Sean Payton. Son of a bitch knows a run game. Like but that's how I feel watching them. So I like the Broncos. I like the run game. I like the defense. Bo Nix, not so much. And I this is what you're going to get with him. Could he be a okay starter? Maybe, but right now he doesn't even do the safe stuff right now, which is just kind of disappointing for me.
All right, we're going to take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors, and we're going to get back into some NFL concept stuff, some scheme stuff with Nate that I'm excited to talk about.
Welcome to JJ's.
I'll have a... Wait, there's no way I can get a burger?
No chance, but you can have the NFL on CBS streams live on Paramount+. Oh, hang on. There's a toy.
All right, Nate, I want to talk with you a little bit scheme stuff. Let's start it this way. From what you've seen so far on tape, watching all of these teams, and for those who don't know, you can follow Nate on Twitter. There's his handle if you're watching right now on YouTube. He posts great film analysis throughout each week, day after day, really. So for you so far, from what you've seen, which offensive scheme, sorry, hold on, I was looking at the wrong one. Which play callers have stood out to you as kind of those consistent chess match winners versus opposing defensive coordinators, and what are they kind of doing to win the chess match?
I don't know if anyone's heard about this guy, but that Ben Johnson in Detroit's pretty good. Yeah, he's pretty good with those game plans too. Some of that is credit to Hank Fraley, the offensive line coach, and it's just a benefit when you have guys at the same personnel year after year, and you can just add layers to your offense, and that's what you see with them. His designs, it's just all sound stuff. He's not a Shanahan guy. He's more of an offensive system that I personally like. He has some Sean Payton elements to his offense, which, some of that's Dan Campbell influence as well. But Ben Johnson, man, it's just, he's always going to commit to the run game. Why not? When you have that line and you have those backs, the run game sound, he makes decisions like Sam Laporta is a negative blocker, and I know there's fantasy stuff like that. Who cares about his blocking? But they really do a good job of like hiding him, but without hiding him like, oh, he's always going to be on the backside. He might be on the front side, but we're going to have him go to a DB as opposed to block a defensive end like you want with some tight ends. Just little things like that, just putting guys in good spots. They'll invert him and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So Amon-Ra St. Brown's the slot guy, is de facto tight end, and the Porter's split out. They haven't done it so much this year, but that was the thing last year. But I would say really just watch them against the Vikings. They had answers against the cover 0 looks. They had answers against the first early down looks. Against the Vikings defense, I love watching defenses like the Vikings to see how offenses answer them, and good offenses. And it was cool to see they didn't use zone so much, which is kind of dicey, or they didn't use polar so much, which is kind of dicey against the Vikings because they have so much movement. So they just pounded away with duo, which is my personal favorite run. We'll talk about probably a little bit, but that run is just an at you run, and that's what's cool. This offense has a big menu. What they do, rather than just go Cheesecake Factory in every game, they narrow it down and go, okay, here's our happy hour menu for this game. Like, we're going to narrow it down. Okay, now these are our 12 plays we're going to lean into. And it's just little twists on common concepts he'll do. He'll switch roles, have one guy run the over instead of the other guy, have a guy run a deep curl instead of a dig. It's just little things like that. So it's all sound play, but just nice little twists, even if it doesn't seem very fancy. So I got to give him a shout out because it's like shooting fish in a barrel to talk about him, but it really is good ball.
And it's good to know for fantasy managers because that's an offense you can lean on, rely on in the second half, make plays to get these players on your roster. And I love the point you brought up about using Brian Flores' Vikings defense as kind of a barometer for how these offensive play callers are going to be for you rest of the season, because there are still so many coordinators. It's not a bad thing. Like, for example, the Giants, Shane Bowen, he doesn't really do too much. Some games like the Eagles and the Bengals, it's a lot of just rush 4, drop 7, and it works to an extent. Like, it's not always a bad thing, but it doesn't maybe tell you as much, I would say, versus like maybe watching Jalen Hurts, using that example because they just played the Giants versus like a Todd Bowles. So something interesting to keep in mind. I want to also ask kind of some of your favorite concepts you've seen teams lean on in the past game. Maybe it's stuff you've seen in the past or some new things.
Yeah. Oh, and then even just the last question, it was just like Ryan Grubb from the Seahawks. I feel like, it's not all perfect right now, but they adjust really well. And that's a big deal. Some of these other guys that call plays, I could see Bobby Slowick in Houston. Once they get off that opening script, they're dead. And that means the first 15 plays, then all of a sudden they can't adjust to what the defense is actually showing them for that game plan. I think Grubb is the opposite. Early on, I'm always like, okay. They kind of try a little too much, but they do a great job of chopping fat as the game goes along. So I want to give him a shout out, even if all the results haven't been there yet. And then my guy, Sean McVay, who's just always got to give him a shout out. But concept wise, I would say anything full field read is really not only stuff I like, but it's in vogue right now because defenses are mixing up their coverages so much. So you need answers to everything. Like certain concepts like mesh, which is 2 crossers, is going to be better against man than zone. Yeah, it has answers against zone, but you want it against man coverage. And like full field read concepts, and I'm talking about like Y cross, which is a big post, an over route, and then a dig and a curl behind it, or sail, which is a deep corner route, a flat route, and a go. Those concepts are back in vogue. They never really left, but they've been more really more beneficial to run this year because of how varied defenses are. And a lot of defenses are running cover 2 as a variety. Like if they bring us simulated or creeper pressure, they'll run cover 2 behind it. So what I like those plays is they have answers. If you have a quarterback that can find the right read, which, the good ones can, that is what's really cool. Because those are gash plays. Those are chunk plays. Like those full field read plays. Another one is smash drive. So smash is a corner and a hitch. Drive is a crosser and a dig. See,
Madden players know.
Oh yeah. Good play because again, it has. I've seen Drake Maye hit 2 corner routes on it already. I've seen, Sam Darnold hit a dig on it. Like everybody runs it. More Shanahan guys love it, but it's kind of a pretty common concept. But that concept I really like because again, has answers to whatever you want to run. If you want to go single high, I'll go over here. If you want to run 2 high, I'll go over here. I'm not sure what the coverage is. I can just full field progress on it if you have the protection for it. So those plays I'm just always going to be a fan of because they give answers where other times teams will spoon feed and go, we're running our man beater on this play. Oh shoot, it's not man coverage. We're dead. As opposed to now where it's like, okay, well, let's get the keys back to the quarterback a little bit to make us right. But we have to give them all the answers to the test.
I love that answer, Nate. I want to transition a little bit to the run game. One kind of, I don't want to call it a cheat code, but edge I think fantasy managers have is when they're evaluating before the season which running backs to invest in. It's a lot of the time great to evaluate in the healthiest run games. And a lot of the healthiest run games, some people just look on paper, oh, here's PFF's ranking of the run blocking. I think you're better off trying to parse through which run scheme is actually the best run scheme in the NFL or some of the better ones. So talk to us about some of the better run schemes you've watched this year and maybe some of the better run concepts you've seen.
Oh yeah, this is my wheelhouse now. Lions, already mentioned them. They run a little bit of everything and they can run everything. Not a lot of guys can because of their offensive line personnel. The Rams, this has kind of been a evolution of Sean McVay going from a zone heavy team to a power duo man heavy scheme, which is what is the better run now in the NFL anyway. So that's kind of being on top of it all. The Colts run game with and without Jonathan Taylor. Because just a lot of RPOs, the threat of Anthony Richardson, they're very sound in what they do. So actually their run game is very good and sound, even if it's Goodson back there. And really the Bills, under Joe Brady, I've really been digging this run game. And I've been called it spread bully or bully spread. I still don't know what I called it, but I mix it up every time. But that is what they've leaned into, is that this is a power attack that can then also just unleash the dragon Josh Allen on you. So I liked it a lot with Ray Davis in there too, because he's more of an at you runner. And I actually think he's better for this offense as far as just down to downness. But James Cook, it seemed like he heard those whispers too, because he ran really hard last week. So I don't want to knock James Cook, but James Cook is a little more boom busty. He's learning to stay in between the tackles, not bounce some stuff. He's not a full on DeAndre Swift, but he is really he's learning to kind of stay tight on his reads, which is good because that's what this offensive attack is. So I love the Bills offense right now, especially now they got Amari Cooper. It's like, okay, you answered the one question I had about you guys. Now you got some speed and a guy that can win one-on-one. Yeah. But their run game though, it's they'll do duo, which is power without the polar. They'll do college guys call it dart, which is you pull the tackle. And it's tackle trap, tackle pull, however you want to call it.
Eagles ran that against the Giants this past
week.
Yes,
the Eagles ran it. It's a big spread heavy teams and gun heavy teams have started getting into it because it's a great run against those looks. If you get light boxes, the angles are just a little better. Because you just can't run zone that much anymore. Defense, you can, but defenses are just so much better against zone runs now. So you have to kind of change up the angles of attack. So yeah, the Bills run game has been one of my favorites really the last 9 calendar months, 10 calendar months.
General question on that, because I found that last part you said interesting and other parts you mentioned within it. So for example, I'll just use the Giants because I watched their tape and they run a lot more zone than power gap, but they've been so much more successful with power gap concepts. Is there a reason why this is not the only team I've seen be in this regard. Is there a reason why teams would not lean as much into power gap stuff like it and do and things like that? Is there something that holds them back from calling that? Is there more of do you have any idea why coaches do that?
Duo can be, you want some more powery offensive linemen. Some guys are more thicker. And it really is a running back run. The running backs make you right on it or can make you righter or more correct. But power, as far as gap runs with a guy with pulling, that's why teams won't lean into it as much. Although more teams are because they're finding different ways to do it. So counter and power, which are gap runs. It's because defenses are so wonky and how much they slant and how much they move bodies. It can really screw up the angles.
Okay.
It makes you really susceptible to TFLs and negative plays. So it's a little more boom busty. I will say teams are figuring out ways to mitigate that. I just watched the 49ers do a double tight end counter where they didn't pull an offensive lineman. They just pulled they pulled Juszczyk and Kittle on it. And it should have been a good play. Jordan Mason missed the hole, but it was, so I didn't really want to tweet it or anything, but teams are finding different ways to pull different guys than usual. A typical counter play is the guard and tight end. And now they are trying to go guard and tackle, GT counter. You need a running quarterback for that. That helps. Like I just said, they bring up the example of the 2 tight ends, they're center pull, they're figuring out different ways to pull guys. So that's why teams kind of shy away from it. You never want to pull against the because they just slant guys so much that it's just it's suicide. So you watch teams, the Chargers are a great example right now. They'll go heavy personnel and they'll run counter and gap scheme. But they do it because they know the fronts they're going to get. If I'm in 3 tight ends or a fullback and 2 tight ends,
right,
you're not going to get too funky against me. So we can do it against them.
All right, Jacob, I know you want to ask Nate about one offense and one offensive coordinator, so I'll let you do that right now.
Yeah, it might be a bit of a bummer, but I can't get out of this podcast without asking about his thoughts on Drew Petzing, what we've seen from their offense this year, and especially because we're talking about counters right now. Nobody does it more than Arizona.
Yeah, they really love pin pull too, and they love duo too. Like I'm still a sucker for the run game. I will say the most disappointing thing with Petzing so far is his use of Marvin Harrison Jr. And Harrison Jr. has been great at the catch point, but it's been also his routes have been very true X, meaning true vertical routes and stop routes and hitches, which is because they run a lot of trips personnel or trips formations, 3 to one side on ISO Marvin Harrison Jr. So they're asking him to do all the hard stuff. And I kind of want to make his life a little easier. So people just stop saying, like, you like this guy? He seems like a bust. He's not a bust. Just got to use him a little better. But I would say they tried a little bit doing too much. They can be a little too static at times. I think when they have some creativity is what you see usually in the opening drive. That's why they keep scoring on opening drives. It's like they use all their creativity in the first 10 plays and they're like, all right, we're good. Like we don't have to motion the guy again. We don't have to repeat a call now. So I still like it, but I thought I would love it at this point. And it's more just been like, oh, I feel like I've like you asking me just makes me feel like, yeah, it's like, I know I'm like, I hyped him up a little bit, but it's like, yeah, I'm with you guys. Like I thought this would be a top 5 run game. It's more like 12th.
Him and Sloak are the biggest disappointments this year, right?
Yeah, Sloak and the offensive line coach for the Texans, because everybody's regressed there, which has just been like I should look up his name because I'm going to start slandering him because that's been kind of a disappointment for me because I thought they're healthy, and now I'm seeing Laramie Tutzel make the most obvious rookie mistakes, and usually to me that's. Obviously it's on the guy that got paid a lot of money to not make mistakes if you're going to be the leader of the offensive line, but also on coaching because it just seems like they're not sound protection wise. Guys are going to the wrong guys. So yeah, it's on Sloak as the coordinator, but it's also on the offensive line coach too. But yeah, I would say Cardinals passing game's been a little disappointing, but the run game's been fine enough. I just maybe thought it would have a little more juice to it, and they suck in fourth down. It's just like I don't know what keeps going on fourth down with them. Like they just can't get out of their own way sometimes.
It's a weird passing game. I don't want to get too much into this because there's so many other questions I want to ask you, but it's weird because I like Kyler Murray's arm talent overall, but I don't love his arm talent when it comes to keeping an offense in rhythm and on time and like utilizing like in breakers. And to me, like the best passing games are the ones who can utilize the quarterbacks who really can utilize that middle of the field. It's why I love Drake May so much.
Right.
Williams,
personally. Why I had concerns about Jayden Daniels. Yeah.
Yes. That's why I have concerns about Kyler Murray. Like I just don't see it ever happening with him. There are ways to scheme around it though, obviously, like the Cardinals have done that throughout his career. I want to have a couple fun ones to hear before our next break, and then we're going to try to zip through a couple of these questions I needed to ask you. But if you could pair one play caller with one quarterback, you can choose that right now. Who would it be?
Dak Prescott with Sean Payton.
Okay.
Trevor Lawrence with Kyle Shanahan, and Drake Maye with Bruce Arians. Those were the 3 I got because
that would be
Drake
fun.
Maye with Bruce Arians would be fireworks show. It would be the most fun offense you'll ever watch in your life, and that's why I'm sad we'll never get to see it. Because Maye is kind of like a little Carson Palmer to him that can run a little bit better,
that would be cool to watch him with Aaron. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, I know. We'll never see it though. Maybe it would be a consultant somewhere. Something. But Dak Prescott with Sean Payton because I think Dak's mind for the game is underneath accuracy. That like he's turned into a little bit of Drew Brees, late career Drew Brees. And that's why I just picture that offense. And he's such a efficient operator with his mind that Sean Payton would love that. That's to me a match made in heaven. And then Trevor with Shanahan or any kind of Shanahan disciple, just because he throws so well on the move. He's good at that stuff. He gets the ball quick and he's willing to throw the ball in the middle. Some of his best throws are seam benders and digs. So that's another guy that thank God he's playing better too, because I can't wait to pull some receipts on people.
I'm really glad you brought him up. He's playing phenomenal lately. And he has the most accurate deep ball in the league. And I just think him and BTJ are such a perfect pairing that if he gets a good play caller next year, like this could go nuts. And people are really down on Trevor. Which
they shouldn't be. I've taken a break from like arguing for Dak Prescott and Trevor as I'm bringing both of them up on this segment. Is that I don't know when Dak Prescott makes second team All Pro and wins a playoff game on the road. Aren't we done with the arguments? Like, wasn't it the stuff we had to prove? Like, so what do we got now? Like this guy's 30. He wins games. He puts up stats, and he like plays really good quarterback. Yeah, I
Yes.
don't know. So it's just because he's the quarterback, the Cowboys starter. It's always going to be like that. But that's why I'm just like, I'm past it. I'm post quarterback arguments. It's like once they get out of my hands, it's like I'm done with that. But same with Trevor is that I posted back-to-back clips. He had the interception against the Bills where it looked like he sailed the ball over Brian Thomas Jr.'s head. They run the same route, a little different concept, but same route, same play action, footwork and everything, moving to his left, hits it right on the money to Christian Kirk. And this is why we talk about drops a lot, but it's also details to the game that matter for quarterbacks as well. If a receiver on the interception, Brian Thomas Jr., who again is a great player, but he's a rookie. It was a rookie in week 2 or week 3 of the season. He's 5 yards short on the route. I'd say I'll give him 3 yards short on the route. 3 yards is almost 10 feet.
Right.
That's significant. And if you're playing, and people don't notice with the NFL, or they should, people are really fast. And if you are a yard off or 2 yards off and you're running really fast, that matters because the angles become extrapolated. And as a quarterback, you're assuming a lot. People go, well, he did this. Why doesn't the quarterback adjust? These things happen so quickly that you have to throw to a spot. And if I throw, oh, he adjusted, I throw here, it's behind him. And it's just like physics don't work that way. Have your buddy run 20 yards down, 20 yards away, which is 60 feet. That's the amount, that's the mound, that's a home plate, 60 feet, 6 inches. Have him run 1 degree shorter, and you'll just see the difference there. Maybe your buddy runs a 6.240, but it's still like when a guy's running a 4.3, it's even more extrapolated. So that's what frustrates me about Trevor is he makes a lot of good decisions, and all his bad is when he's pressing and the rest of the team's falling apart, and everyone goes, this guy was supposed to be generational, huh? It's like, well, no, like generational prospect. Like now
Right.
I'm thinking of him more as, and this was my original comp for him was supercharged Matt Ryan, where that's kind of how I feel about him. Good on the benders, could create a little bit. He's a better athlete than Matt was. Still that skinny frame, doesn't throw the best deep ball, but now you got Brian Thomas Jr. to make that a lot better. So yeah, I don't know. I've always been a Trevor fan, but it's funny that now that he plays well, no one wants to talk about him.
I love that you brought up Dak Prescott in that because I've watched 7 games of Giants tape this year. Dak Prescott was the best actual quarterback as far as just playing the quarterback position. I saw a lot of people watch that game and they asked me like, if Jack's so good, how come he only hit 1 deep shot to CeeDee Lamb? It's like, because he didn't have to. He just operated quick game the entire game, found solutions the entire game. And so why would he do it if he doesn't have to, if you're finding those solutions in easier concepts?
That's my argument for the Chiefs right now. Writing about them last week, everyone's like, what's wrong with the Chiefs? I'm like, it's because they don't have to do anything. They're getting 5 yards a pop running the ball, and they're getting first downs like whenever they want.
Yeah.
You don't have to throw deep if you don't have to.
Right.
You throw deep to open up everything else in the offense. But if you're getting it and having your way, you don't need to do it. Like, why take the risk? So that is just kind of, yeah, I get it. I want the fireworks factory too. But it's much better to have a nice, brutally efficient offense and then just set your dial to it. Like, okay, we're getting 5 yards on this play. All right, we call this, we're getting 6 yards on it. All right, we're taking no negative plays. Like, that's good offense too. I know we all want the greatest show on turf, but sometimes good offense is just boring. Like, that's just how it looks sometimes.
The Chiefs have not had that 30, but the Jaguars had it. Just wanted to bring this up real quick on Lawrence. He leads the league in deep throws, and he has a 48% highly accurate ball on those throws, which is the highest. Sam Darnold's at 47%. They're the only 2 above 40%. That's per fantasy points data. I called him the most accurate deep baller earlier, and I'm like, I can just hear people getting mad about that already.
Yeah, so now you got the stats to back it up.
Yep.
Speaking of quarterback play, though, Nate, one selfish question I promised myself I'd ask you because we're just talking about quarterback, the ability to process post-snap information, post-snap, and find solutions. I've asked this to every single person that I've ever had on my Giants podcast, every single former quarterback, I should say. And I want to ask you this question, and it's a tougher question, but I want to see what your thoughts are on this. Do you believe that the ability to process information post-snap and find solutions and find space is something that can be worked on and improved and really drastically improved? I want to ask, not small improvements, but drastic improvement. Or is it something that's innate and natural? Because when I watch a player like Maye at UNC, it feels innate. It feels natural. When I watch a player like Daniel Jones at Duke, it felt like it just didn't have much of a ceiling to it.
Yeah, I think it's, if I had to like chop it up into a pie, I want to say like 7 out of 10 is natural feel.
Okay.
And like then 3 is like what you teach and what you can get away with and what you can kind of like, watch any quarterback in the Shanahan offense. All of a sudden, all those guys have great anticipation, but it's because they're taught throw it to the hash, plant your foot, throw it to the hash. That's taught. That's not natural feel. And then when those guys aren't wide open, you see Purdy against the Chiefs, and you see how it feels. You see when not throwing a guy open. But I would say most of that is feel, and most of that, and some of that, and by feel, and some of that's just reps and going what I can and can't get away with. And usually the guys that we're talking about were the best player on the field since they were sophomores in high school, so they get the reps to work those things out. So, but I do think it's feel. I mean, watch the Eagles offense, watch Jalen Hurts trying to anticipate anything over the middle. He doesn't do it. Everything has to be wide open. And I'm sure now he's on what's his play caller? Number 3, number 4.
Yeah.
And everyone goes, man, why don't they call routes over the middle? They do. He just doesn't throw them because he doesn't have that anticipation. That's not his throwing style. Russell Wilson and we played together at Wisconsin. I backed him up at Wisconsin. He could throw a deep ball. I mean, his arm talent's just insane, but there's certain throws I actually was a little better at. And that's just because I could throw a guy underneath a little bit better. I'm not saying I was good. I was not good, but it's just, I had my throwing style led to that. I was better at bubbles and better at stick routes, and Russell still struggles with those. So some of that is just, it's just natural arm style, natural throwing style. That's all I got. Bubbles and stick routes is all I got. I know and a quarter route maybe.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean, Nate, when you say something like, I wasn't good. But do you understand how actually good you were at quarterback when you consider just the vast scope of people who have tried to play the position and have never backed up somebody at the D1 level at Wisconsin?
When your dad played for 14 years in the NFL and your uncle played for 10, being a backup in college doesn't feel as cool.
Right. So
it's all my sliding scale with this. No, my wife has tried to emphasize that to me. That it's hey, you should be more proud of it. But it's
you really should be.
I got the helmet. That's it. That's it.
I love that.
I think you're cool, Nate.
Thank you, Jacob. I appreciate that. Thank you.
We're going to take one more quick break and then wrap up with a couple more bonus questions here.
If you love football, this is the best time of the year.
This is as big as it gets. The stuff of absolute dreams.
All right, Nate, we're going to wrap here with a couple bonus questions that could help fantasy managers. The first being, which offensive scheme, and therefore offense with a little bit more reps to build up that rapport, can you see breaking out in the second half?
The Cardinals. I think it's a post bye, which stinks because they have a later bye. But I also do think their schedule eases up a little bit, not the next couple of weeks, but a little bit later. But I think just because they have so many young players, Michael Wilson's a second-year guy, Trey McBride's a third-year guy, James Conner's a vet, Kyler Murray has missed time, and this is the first time that he's been asked to be a real quarterback. So this is a team that needs a deep breath. Using Marvin Harrison Jr. a little bit better, just kind of chopping some of the fat that we talked about. So they're truly a team I do think that will send, but it might be a little too late, because their bye is a little bit later, but I do think they're going to get better as the season goes along. Seahawks are a little bit like that too. And then I'm going to mention another team that I mentioned a little bit earlier was the Colts.
Yes.
I think there's some people realize what Anthony Richardson is, right? This is a home run swing project. There's going to be mistakes. There's so much good with this offense. The run game is good. And also they throw the ball. This is by design. Shane Steichen is a Norv Turner guy. And Norv Turner it's actually old Wisconsin offenses that used to watch, Dan, is run, and then launch that shit. That's how football in my head is. I was never a West Coast guy. I appreciate some aspects of quick game, but I've always been kind of why do quick game when you can just run for 5 yards? That's kind of been always my thinking. Steichen has a lot of RPOs. I think they're chopping those a little bit because what they're doing is going, hey, RPOs are technically training wheels and make it a little easier on the quarterback, but you're still making the quarterback make a decision. So Anthony's not getting that breather where he can just hand the ball off and go, okay, next play, which young guys need. You don't want to put a lot on their plates right away. Caleb Williams can handle it. Anthony Richardson has less than 1,000 dropbacks in college and NFL.
Wow.
He's going to need game reps, and it's not always going to be pretty, but the signs are there. The signs are, he's going under 50% completion percentage. What if he hits a couple more? What if the guys catch all these balls? What if the guy runs, AD Mitchell runs the right route when he's out there and everything? Also having downs back helps as well. But now I think they're figuring out their personnel. I really respect Steichen and what he runs. It's not always perfect, but it's an offense after my own heart a little too many RPOs, but they're chopping them. But I think
RPOs have been cut in half, by the way. I just looked it up.
have they? Okay, so that's what I felt. So a lot of my stuff is anecdotal, and then hopefully I look at the data. I'm like, if it doesn't match, I'm like, I'll never talk about that again. But it's no. I do the show with Matt Harmon, and that happens sometimes because he charts so much. So I'll be like, he's not that good against man, and I always go anecdotally because I know you have the charting on it.
What does RP data tell us?
Yeah, exactly. So, but I think I've been optimistic about the Colts, not the defense, but the offense. And I've always thought that they were going to be a second half of the year team. It's sometimes you have to remember what your gut instinct was before the season. The Packers last year, when they were 2-6, I remember all my predictions before the year was second half of the year, they'll pick it up. And Jordan Love will pick it up in the second half of the year. They're such a young team. But when you're in the thick of things and they're losing games and Joe Flacco's playing well and like all this stuff, I get how you can lose yourself kind of like in the heat of the moment. But this is how I kind of was projecting them a little bit. I thought Richardson would maybe have a little bit more consistent performances, but I thought this last week wasn't as bad film-wise as I maybe thought on TV. He has the stupid fumble in the red zone, which again, game reps. He just needs to calm down. He still has the rushing element, which is exceptional. But I still think the passing game is so close to really popping. Outside of just the two cool plays that we see us tweet on Twitter all the time, the two cool highlight throws, I think the down-to-down stuff is getting there. And I thought this last game, I know the Dolphins are a zombie team, but it was there. It was just that they were 2 plays off from it being like a real good performance. And as opposed to like, oh, okay, reading between the lines, this is better. So I'm still optimistic about them. So I'm just going back to my preseason takes here.
Dolphins defense has been good though. People sleep on the Dolphins defense. Calais Campbell and those guys have just been pushing people around.
And what's his face? Zach Salier. They're beefy. They can get after the passer. The linebackers are really good against the run. You catch them in the pass a couple times. They still have Jalen freaking Ramsey.
Yeah.
Like people remember him.
Campbell is like the most underrated NFL player in the last 2 decades as far as impact and what he puts on tape, from what I've seen. And they even lost my boy here, Andrew Van Ginkel, and they're still a good defense. I make the joke on my podcast all the time, Nate, that I feel like Wisconsin is linebacker U, and it keeps getting proven year after year. Leo Chenot, who I thought should have been a second-round pick, drops all the way to round 4 stupidly because the NFL's like, where are we going to play him? It's like, don't worry about that. Look at his tape. Same thing happened with Herbig from the Yeah, you can go on, and we won't.
TJ Watt's technically a linebacker.
Yeah, exactly. These days,
Joe Schobert.
I want to be clear to the listeners because I will get cold takes for this. Those days are over. Now that Jim Leonard is gone, I have no faith in that continuing to be the case with Wisconsin. I'm just going to be honest about the situation. Sadly, we've gotten to a part where I'm very nervous about everything when it comes to Wisconsin football. Moving forward,
I'm biting my tongue. I'm biting my tongue on them. I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to be nice. I know Wisconsin fans are always like, why don't you break down the Badgers? I'm like, because I'll be so mean. And I'll go, what do you do? Shotgun run? Really? I'll be so mean. I don't want to do that. I don't know the staff that well. Like they've changed out so many people there, which is good and bad.
And the defense has been good. Let me be clear.
Yes.
The Jim Leonard defense, I'll never.
You know where he is at now, right? Jim Leonard.
I actually don't know where Leonard is.
He's with the Broncos.
Oh, wow.
And maybe that's why the Broncos defense picked up a little bit. Yep. A lot of people, I had a whole deep dive article. One of my first athletic big articles I was going to do was how much Jim Leonard was influencing modern defense right now, because a lot of his stuff is Rex Ryan stuff that he kind of modernized. And I think when you watch Kirby Smart's defenses, you watch any of those top defense, even Saban a little bit, was all of a sudden Kirby Smart kind of took ownership. He's like, yeah, this is my front. This is my blitz. And then all of a sudden, word behind the scenes was, oh no, actually Kirby visited with Jim Leonard to learn about what he was doing in Wisconsin, which I'm still just kind of like,
yeah.
Are we gonna get some props for our guy?
Why is that guy ever let out the door at Wisconsin? But that's a whole nother story. We won't talk Wisconsin ball. I want to keep it fantasy folks for now. A couple more to leave you on. One of the last 2 will be this one. Which team can you go the opposite way on? Like teams will get more tape on them, the quarterback or the offensive scheme, and you could see these offenses regressing in the second half.
Oh man, I think even with the additions they have, the Jets, it was just the offensive line is just not there. I think now they got the too many mouths to feed problem. Garrett Wilson looks pissed. Just that's more of a human element thing where it's just like they're the Jets. You're Giants a little bit. Andrew Thomas being out is devastating. I mean, I think we all knew that, but then you really see it in that first week. First week without him. So like that's another one right there. because the other ones feel like I'm just kicking the guys already down. Like, like the Titans. Yeah, like, no kidding. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, what else? The Browns. Yeah, no kidding. Like, okay, Browns actually might be more interesting.
No, I'm excited to watch.
Yeah,
Jameis.
actually, I'm a little more excited with Jameis. So that's the first answer. I would just say which that. But like, so most of those teams, like the Bucs are going to fall off because they lost Mike Evans. And that offense is and Chris Godwin, because that offense is relying on them by design.
Right.
Okay, so that one's going to just take a natural. So it's not more scheme wise, because I actually was really liking what Liam Cohen was doing. It's more just the personnel falling off. Literally.
Do you have any thoughts on Cohen's run game? Do you think they might be able to control games on the ground? Because I kind of think that's what they're going to lean into. People have talked for fantasy so much about, do you get McMillan, do you get Shepard? And I kind of think we might just see 20 plus runs a game if they could do it.
I think you're right. I think we see more pony personnel with two of them on the field. Because
I think I heard you talk about that. It's like by far the most efficient play in the NFL is when Rachaad White and Bucky been on the field together.
Because Rachaad White can catch passes. So it's actually not like a lot of other pony personnels. It's like one scat back, one power guy. Rachaad White's a unique guy. I still don't know what he is. Like, I don't know if I like him or not. I really don't know. I'm so agnostic with Rachaad White these days. But what he can do is catch. And someone's got to catch those screens. All the receiver screens that Chris Godwin gets. Is it McMillan? I don't know. He wasn't great on those in college. Is it, Trey Palmer's got some juice, but it's more downfield. Sterling Shepard's more of a steady Eddie. You're not really designing receiver screens for him. So it's like, where do the touches go? Just doing a math problem. I think it's Rachaad White. Bucky. And Bucky. God, I wish Bucky was 10 pounds heavier. He would. I said this in the process. If Bucky Irving was Rachaad White's size, he'd be a top 5 running back, because he just runs hard. He's got great vision. I loved him at Oregon. It was just that he runs like he's 210 and he's 190. Those guys, Kyron Williams kind of proved that you could do it, but Kyron Williams always has battled injuries. Just weight matters in a combat sport. Weight matters a lot. So, I don't know. That's why I'm curious. Actually, Matt Harmon and I talked this morning about the Bucs, like where we thought that would go. So I'm curious to watch them. Whoever gets the screens is who I'm betting on.
All right, we'll end it here with this one, Nate. For fantasy managers, give us, based on the tape you've seen, I know it's a tough question, so you can default if you don't want to, but give us one player that you'd be most confident in breaking out in the second half of the
most confident. I'm not confident in anything. Man, should I just say Marvin Harrison Jr. just to plan a no, that'd be one, because I just do think they're Troy Franklin a little bit, because that passing game of the Broncos has to find something. I would say the Colts receivers, I think, because that's going to pick up a little bit. I will say my sneaky deep waiver stash is the 49ers have a lot of injuries. And the 49ers, well, even deeper than that, Ronnie Bell.
Ronnie Bell. His not pretty good at Purdue. I liked it.
Not saying this guy is going to be they're going to design 500 touches for him, but he has 14 career targets and 6 of them come in the red zone. He has 4 touchdowns on 6. I think it was 4 touchdowns on 5 targets, I think, in the red zone. So a third of his targets in his career have been in the red zone. So I think that's if you need a dart to throw at the flex position, that's Ronnie Bell, because I think he can scam a touchdown over the next couple of weeks. So I had to bring that one up too. That's, man, I wish I had more for you. No,
those are.
I wish I could find some.
We got a Ronnie Bell reference is as good as it gets.
If you need a desperation dart throw, that's what I want you.
You're in a 2018 league. We got not just kidding.
You have nobody else. Rashad Bateman. There we go. How about that? There, but that one's an obvious one.
Got to get one.
Other guys get hurt. Got to go with Rashad Bateman. So
got to get that one in for Matt. I'm so glad you brought up Anthony Richardson, and I think you're right. If he can survive these next 2 weeks, he has Houston, Minnesota, both on the road. That's as scary as it gets. Mm-hmm. If he can survive that, then he's got some games that the Colts can really control on the ground. Buffalo, the Jets, the Patriots. They're another team with a late bye, week 14. But after that, I think it could be a big end of the season as long as he makes it through these next 2 weeks. And as long as he's still starting and healthy, I think you buy him after these 2 weeks, because the production probably won't be great.
And he's always going to have a rushing stuff, because that's once again the red zone or high leverage situations. He's going to get the touches. I know they were trying to save him hits, but why wouldn't you? Because those are auto explosive plays. Those are auto touchdowns if they call him in the red zone. So that's never going to go away. And that's why I never understood the Flacco arguments. It's are you guys really your goal to go 9-8 this year and lose in the first round of the playoffs? Or is it to grow Anthony Richardson into a true franchise guy? To
Right.
me, the goal is Anthony Richardson. And then, yes, hopefully the rest of the team is picking up and doing all that. They get DeForest Buckner back soon on defense. That's going to help out a little
Huge.
bit. Yeah, but the Vikings matchup, that's interesting. That's
terrifying.
that's a
I had a
the run-
nightmare the other night that the Colts drafted a quarterback in round 1 this offseason. That tells you where my mental state is.
was it Garrett Nussmeier?
That was not somebody
man.
real. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. It's not Shadur. But no, I do think, oh God, no, now I'm like really want to watch the Colts Vikings one because the Colts are so unique. Like there's just what they run, and the Vikings, of course, are the Brian Forrest test. So that I would just like to see, all right, what's the matchup this week? So yeah, that one's a good one in a couple of weeks.
Thank you so much, Nate, for taking the time today. This conversation was actually even more fun than I expected it to be.
Good.
That's how you lived up to the expectations and exceeded them. I think every listener will feel that way as well. We're new with our show Beyond the Box Score. This is our first year. We're getting it started. We need support and help for everybody. If you can like the show, please do that right now. Please subscribe and let us know what you thought. Give us feedback because I'm pretty sure you're going to really enjoy this episode. And now you know where to find Nate's work. You can find it on Yahoo. You can find him on Twitter. That's where you're going to get these kind of breakdowns. Other than that, have a great rest of your week or weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.